Part 2. Metamorphosis. Chapter 7. Haight, Ashbury. Wednesday, November 4th, 1981. Though they weren't practicing Mormons, Velia's mother maintained several church traditions she'd been raised on as a child back in Utah. The most important of these was family home evening, something Velia enjoyed so long as Janice was in town. Every Monday night, they'd cook and eat together before playing board games and talking until bedtime. Periodically, the trio would see a movie, but that hadn't happened since Raiders of the Lost Ark earlier that summer. After Roger's challenge at the arcade, Velia used their weekly family gathering to petition to keep her job, which her mother allowed once Velia promised to never walk home alone again. To secure the practice time she'd need to prepare for her face-off, Velia lied about Kevin needing extra help after school for the remainder of the month. Janice voiced her support for the young woman's work ethic, and following a few rounds of balderdash, Linda capitulated. The next 2 days flew by. There were no more incidents on the bus or at school, and Velia spent every possible moment at the arcade mastering Polybius. The other kids ceded the controls to Roger or Velia whenever they wanted, since everyone was eagerly awaiting the showdown. Even Kevin was accommodating. He looked the other way on game repairs, in part because patrons were only interested in Polybius. Whenever it was Roger's turn to play, Kevin would take Velia to the back office to practice their Krav training. He'd even brought a striking pad to help Velia perfect her front kick technique. "You're a natural at this," Kevin encouraged. "It feels good to hit," Velia growled, pummeling the pad. "We better get back to the register, or it'll turn into Lord of the Flies out there. I've got a few kids setting sodas on the machines, and even you can't repair that kind of damage." Velia followed Kevin onto the main floor and its well-worn green carpet. Roger's fat head was visible over the crowd of kids watching him play Polybius. One tapped Roger on the shoulder, nodding toward Velia. The split in focus got him killed in the game. Roger tried to retaliate by violently shaking the cabinet, but the machine didn't move. Velia snickered at his impotence. Roger turned around. "Something funny? Test tube, baby?" "What's that supposed to mean?" Velia challenged. "Ask your dyke of a mother." Velia acted out of instinct, rushing toward Roger, but he backed away, blending into the wall of bodies, giggling the whole time. "Watch out!" he sneered. "Somebody let their little bitch off the leash." "Roger!" Kevin barked from behind the counter. "Yeah?" Kevin was cupping the receiver of the orange phone. "Your father called. He wants you home, right now." "Lucky you." Roger taunted Velia by forming scissors with his fingers. "You better practice. Friday the 13th is coming up fast." None of the kids filled the void left by Roger, so Velia secured her hair with a pair of bobby pins, stepped forward, and dropped a quarter into Polybius. She'd made more progress mastering this game than with Kevin's combatives. Unlike the other arcades in the building, this one was adaptive. The better you played, the harder it became. This is why Roger kept dying around the same location. He approached it like a sprint, when it was actually a marathon. Velia racked up points over a longer period of time, never missing one of the devil-horned checkpoints that appeared at the same moment a high-point reward was revealed to tempt the player from flying through the safeguard. But Roger's blitzkrieg approach had, so far, resulted in a higher overall score. She was deep into her long-burn strategy when an elated voice cried, "Velia just broke Roger's record!" Ripples of electric excitement coursed through the crowd. Some of them even patted her on the shoulders. She'd never felt this accepted by her peers. It was an addictive but fleeting feeling. She was riding high on this chemical cocktail when tragedy struck. A spectator fell to the floor and began violently convulsing. The crowd dissipated, save for a few of the boy's friends who knelt by his side. "Kevin!" Velia yelled. He jumped over the counter. "What happened?" All the other boys were shocked into silence. "He's having a seizure," Kevin answered himself. "Velia, go to the phone and dial these 3 numbers in order. 911. Got it?" Velia ran to the register and placed the emergency call. The operator asked her to stay on the line, so Velia stretched the curly phone cord as far as it would allow, relaying information about the boy's condition until an ambulance reached the arcade. Kevin's hands were shaking as the paramedics rolled the unconscious young man out of the building on a creaking metal gurney. Velia wrapped her arms around her boss's abdomen, but their moment of closure was interrupted by the arrival of a thick-necked man holding a black leather flip notepad emblazoned with a large red R. "Could you tell me what just happened here?" "Who the hell are you?" Velya protested. Kevin scooped Velya behind him. "A young boy had a seizure." "Interesting." The man jotted something down using a half-sized pencil, then paused to point it at Kevin. "Was he playing one of your games at the time of the incident?" "I'm not sure." "No!" Velya exclaimed. "He was watching me play." "Really?" The man scribbled more notes. "I'm sorry, but who are you?" Kevin asked. "Name's Roach," the man said with an enigmatic smile. "I'm a local journalist covering the effects video games are having on kids and culture. Is this the first time one of your machines has caused a seizure among the patrons?" "How do you know the game caused it?" Velya interrogated. Roach smiled. "What's your evidence it didn't?" "I think we're done here," Kevin demanded. "Mind if I hang around and ask the other kids questions?" Kevin pointed at the door. "Actually, I do. Please leave." The journalist stood for a moment, writing in his pad before flipping it shut. "Noted. You two have a nice rest of your day." The second the man was gone, Velya turned to her boss. "What was that about?" "I told you, you're too young to remember all the social animus toward arcades. He'll spin this to rekindle public outrage against us." "My shift is almost over." Velya looked at the clock hanging behind the register. "Need me for anything before my bus comes?" "No." Kevin put his hands on his head and took a long breath. "See you tomorrow, boss." "Thank you for responding well under pressure," Kevin encouraged. "I can always count on you. I'm thankful for that." Velya's adrenaline crashed the moment she took a seat on the bus. She'd never seen someone have a seizure, but now she understood why Julius Caesar hid his affliction from a public who believed such fits were the result of demonic possession. Velya was the first to arrive home, and waited in the kitchen for her mom, who appeared with Janice moments later, armed with greasy Burger Barn bags. Velya smiled. "Takeout? On a Wednesday?" "Neither of us felt like cooking, and we want to support the owners after everything the police put them through. I've heard a rumor that they're planning to sue the city." "Good," Janice declared, setting down the bags. "They should." Velya recalled Kevin's comment, but she still didn't understand what they were talking about. "I heard something else that was interesting before I left the radio station this evening." Linda glared at her daughter. Velya's intuition told her what was coming. "Did a young boy have a seizure from playing one of the video games at the Malibu Grand Prix?" "No," Velya said, unwrapping her dinner. "Really?" Linda prodded. "He wasn't playing, he was just watching." "What game?" asked Janice as she opened the second bag. "It's called Polybius. I don't know why everyone assumes it was the video game that caused it," Velya replied. "People have been having seizures for centuries." "I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Video games are bad for the brain, especially kids. They're more addictive than drugs." Her mother was quoting directly from her anti-gaming literature again, Velya mused, chewing a mouthful of food. "It's becoming a male-dominated industry," Linda continued. "Female players are disappearing from ads, or they're used as sexual objects to entice male players. It's creating a generation of testosterone-driven vidiots." Velya rolled her eyes. "Don't dismiss your mom," Janice cautioned. "Advertisement is a world she's intimately familiar with. She has expertise. You should listen to what she says." "You bought me an Atari for Christmas last year." Velya looked at Janice. "And Mom took it away after a few weeks." "Because it was brainwashing you," Linda asserted. "I hate to say it, but it's true," Janice affirmed. "You became a different kid when you were glued to that screen all day." "What's a test tube, baby?" Velya blurted out. Linda started choking on her food. She stood, coughing furiously, and shuffled to the sink for water. Janice grimaced in Velya's direction. "What did I say?" Velya whispered. "Why do you ask?" Linda continued hacking. "Roger Savage called me a test tube baby today." Linda and Janice had an entire conversation with their eyes, while Velya sat waiting for an explanation. "Test tube babies are made through artificial insemination." "What's that?" "A relatively new medical technique that helps women get pregnant without having intercourse with a man." "So, I'm a test tube baby?" Velya set down her burger. "No," Linda dismissed. Janice's downward gaze betrayed this wasn't the whole story. Then why don't I know who my father is? Linda returned to her seat, facing Janice and taking a long pause. Do you think she's old enough for this? Yes, Velia answered for Janice. I'm not a kid. Got it? Linda sat back in her seat and folded her arms. Fine. No, you're not a test tube baby. I had you the old-fashioned way, with a man. He was a friend of mine. We met during the Summer of Love in 1967 at the free clinic in Haight, Ashbury. That's in San Francisco. I know, Velia sassed. I'd just left home. Ran away is more accurate, Janice corrected. Right. The whole world felt like it was falling apart at the time. There were riots, more young men were being fed to the Cold War machine in Asia, and a new battle had started in the Holy Land. Amid all this chaos, I found a community, a family in the hippie movement of San Francisco. The Beatles had just released their Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Such a powerful album, Janice said between bites. I was hopeful for the future. Your father, Linda stared at Velia, talked about how, as individuals, we had the power to change the ugly parts we hated in the world. I couldn't get enough. He was magnetic. One night after smoking some grass near the Palace of Fine Arts, we made love under the stars. It was the only time I was with a man. Why? Velia asked. It wasn't for me. Not that it was terrible, but it helped me confirm what I wanted when it comes to love and life. Then, on the 15th day of the following March, you were born into an even more chaotic world. The year of assassinations, Janice added. By that point, I'd already moved here. After I healed from the amputation, a friend took me to Darcell's, which is where I met Janice. Linda reached out and squeezed her partner's hand. Velia was on the edge of her seat, dying to ask the question she'd wanted answered her entire life. What was my dad's name? Ronald. What happened to him? Where is he now? Velia asked with a trembling whisper. He was drafted. I wrote to him a few times to tell him about you, but never got a reply. I assume he was killed in action. The three women sat in silence. After several minutes, Janice tried to change the subject. Did you ever run into the Manson family at the Haight Ashbury clinic? I've heard they were regulars there, before the murders in Los Angeles. If I did, I didn't know it. Linda shrugged, then returned to her dinner.